Hey everybody, back here at the Santa Rosa Rural Cemetery on a rainy day. Here at the Grand Army of the Republic Memorial. This is where we'll start our journey today, guys. We're going to talk about the lone survivor of the Centralia Massacre. So let's go. So here we see the memorial of the Grand Army of the Republic, which was dedicated in 1915. Show you guys this plaque real quick and we'll get going. If anybody wants to stop and read that, just pause it and read it. Pretty interesting. But I thought this was an appropriate place to start the video today, as we talk about the lone survivor of the Centralia Massacre. It happened September 27th, 1864, in Centralia, Missouri. And to talk about Thomas, we really need to talk about a man that some of you might have heard of before, named Bloody Bill Anderson. Now, Bloody Bill Anderson grew up in Kansas during a long battle. It was a war called Bleeding Kansas. That's what they called it. And basically, it was just an ongoing battle between abolitionists and those who were pro-slavery. So, Bloody Bill grew up with war all around him. Well, at the beginning of the Civil War between the states, whatever you want to call it, Bloody Bill went to enlist in the Confederate Army with a friend of his named A.I. Baker. And when they went to enlist, they were attacked by Union forces. And after the attack, Baker basically rolled over on Bloody Bill, then William T. Anderson, and said that he and his family, the Bloody Bill and his family, were Confederate sympathizers and doing all these things for the cause. And this, of course, created animosity between Baker and the Andersons. So at that point, Bloody Bill's father, William Anderson Sr., goes to confront A.I. Baker. A gunfight erupts, and William Anderson is killed. So, of course, this just puts Bloody Bill into an outrage. And he joins up with another man that some of you may have heard of before, William Quantrill of Quantrill's Raiders, who were a Confederate guerrilla group. You know, they'd loot towns and, you know, rob people, you know, do whatever they had to do for their cause, I guess. And then Bloody Bill's 3 sisters are arrested as Confederate spies. And while they're in jail, it's a makeshift jail, it collapses. One of Bill's sisters is killed. The other 2 are severely injured, including one of them being pretty much crushed by the ceiling falling in. And she was paralyzed for the rest of her life. So Bill, at this point, he's had enough. He's just going to do anything he can to get even, to get his revenge on the Union forces. So at this point, Bill breaks off from Quantrill's Raiders. He starts his own line of guerrilla fighters. Among these new fighters that he has are Frank and Jesse James. Frank and Jesse were also bitter about how they'd been treated by the Union. Not only were You know, the Confederacy and the Union at war. But 3 years earlier, Union forces came to the James farm and strung up Jesse's stepfather. They kept on hanging him for information about where Frank James was. Frank James was already a wanted man. Jesse, seeing this at 14 years old and seeing his stepfather permanently disabled after this, had revenge on his mind. So that takes us to today's story in Centralia, Missouri, September 27th, 1864. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, September 27th, 1864, Bloody Bill and his Confederate guerrillas, they were dressed in Union uniforms, guys. They raided the pro-Union town of Centralia, Missouri. They looted the town and drank whiskey from stolen boots, is what the story was. When they heard a train in the distance, they blocked the tracks. And as the train approached and came to a stop, the group made all 125 passengers get off the train. Of these 125 passengers, there were 23 Union soldiers still in uniform. They were on leave after the Battle of Atlanta. They had just captured Atlanta. They were ordered to remove their uniforms, and Bloody Bill called out for a sergeant. Though he wasn't the only sergeant on the train, Thomas Goodman was the only one to step forward. He thought that he was sacrificing himself and that his men would be spared. All were killed but Sergeant Goodman. They were shot, mutilated, and some were even scalped. At that point, the guerrillas took Thomas Goodman as a prisoner of war. So about this point, the guerrillas take Sergeant Goodman back to their camp. What they don't know yet is that the newly constructed 39th Missouri Infantry, led by a man named Andrew Vern Emmon Johnson, or A.V.E. Johnson, as they called him. He was a former school teacher with no military experience, and he was leading this new infantry. They encountered Bloody Bill and his men at the camp. Of Johnston's 147 men, 123 of them were killed. Bloody Bill only lost 3 men that day. 10 others were injured. Major Johnston himself was one of the ones killed. And later years, Frank James said that Jesse was the one that actually pulled the trigger, killing Johnston. So, needless to say, the Union took a big loss that day against Bloody Bill and his men. So after that, Bloody Bill Anderson instructed his men that they were to protect Sergeant Thomas Goodman so that he could be traded for prisoners of war, Confederate prisoners of war, guerrilla officers who had been lost. And they had him for 10 days. And on the 10th night, Thomas Goodman, he escaped while they were trying to cross the Missouri River at night. Well, here he is. As we walk up to the grave of Sergeant Thomas Goodman. He was married to a woman named Mary Ann Wood. They had 5 children together. 3 lived to adulthood. And they came out here to Santa Rosa. And he would live another a little over 21 years, till 1886. And he passed away at the age of 56. So here he is, the lone survivor of the Centralia Massacre, Sergeant Thomas Goodman. We thank him for his service, and I can't even begin to imagine what he went through. The story he told later was just amazing, and definitely part of history that should not be forgotten. So after the massacre in Centralia and the battle that followed, Bloody Bill Anderson would not go on to live another month. October 26th, 1864, so not quite a month later, an officer, Lieutenant Colonel Samuel Cox, had 150 men. They all went after Bloody Bill and his guerrillas. And at first, battle ensued. Although Lieutenant Colonel Cox lost a handful of men, I believe 5 or 6 men, Bloody Bill's men retreated, saw that they were in over their heads. And Bloody Bill was one of the only ones not to retreat. He drew his revolvers and began shooting at the army on both sides of him. And he took a bullet behind the ear, killed him instantly. And there he was, Bloody Bill, dead at about 24 years old. So, short, violent life that guy led. And it's pretty tragic, you know. I mean, be honest, on both sides of the war, we can't discount. You know, I'm out here in California. You know, a lot of the southern audience probably think we're a bunch of Yankees and stuff. That's okay. I had family that fought on both sides, Union and Confederacy. So I've grown up studying both sides. And the Union was not without fault, that's for sure. You know, for groups like Quantrill's Raiders and Bloody Bill and his guerrillas, there were those groups on the other side as well. The Jayhawkers, for example. Jayhawkers, they'd go through towns doing the same thing, burning things down, stealing, looting, just hurting people, whatever you can think of. And Union generals actually said, from the army, said that the Jayhawkers were no better than a band of robbers. So yeah, these groups were just adding fuel to the fire. But crazy times, and this is a story that I wanted you guys to know. So from the grave of Sergeant Thomas Goodman, thank you for watching. Hope you like and subscribe, and looking forward to the next one, guys. Hope you enjoyed this history.